Honourable Members, Mr Speaker.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Honourable youth members, I acknowledge the Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people of this state and their elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge the former members of this parliament who have participated in and nourished the democratic institution of this state. Finally, I acknowledge the people of this state, whether they have been born here or have chosen to make this state their home, and whom we represent to make laws and conduct other business for the peace, welfare and good government of this state. Good afternoon, everybody. The Indigenous Youth Parliament has been an integral component of the Queensland Indigenous Youth Leadership Program since 2009. In 2012, the Indigenous Youth Parliament was renamed the Deeral Indigenous Youth Parliament in honour of Indigenous leader and first Indigenous member of the Queensland Parliament, Mr Eric Deeral. Since 2009, we have had over 500 participants sit in either the Legislative Assembly or the Legislative Council chamber and speak on mock bills, motions or matters of public interest in Queensland or their respective communities. This process involves researching, drafting and presenting your arguments on a particular issue, just like a real Member of Parliament would. Youth members, this Eric Deeral Indigenous Youth Parliament offers you the unique opportunity as young Indigenous leaders to demonstrate and apply the leadership skills learnt throughout the Queensland Indigenous Youth Leadership Program in a true-to-life context. I hope this Youth Parliament will be a positive, inspiring and confidence-building culmination activity that complements the other skills you have gained today and this week, including how to lead through advocacy in your communities, how to participate in the state's decision-making process and when to intervene, the vocabulary, writing and public speaking skills necessary to support your role as leaders, the importance of good governance, public accountability and responsibility, the confidence that comes from successfully stepping outside one's comfort zone. I declare the 2025 Eric Deeral Indigenous Youth Parliament opening. So I'll start by calling the Youth Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on my vision for Queensland that I as Premier will be implementing. As Premier, I will be reenacting, enforcing and passing the treaty for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people through the state of Queensland. I believe that as a state that this should have been done a long time ago and we should be ashamed that this wasn't implemented sooner, and as a result, this will be first on my agenda. In addition to this, as Premier, I will be strongly acknowledging and informing Queenslanders of the significant impacts colonisation has had on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of our country. Colonisation has not only caused the unbroken cycles of intergenerational trauma, but the discriminatory mindset non-Indigenous people have towards the First Nation people of this country. And because of the lack of understanding Queenslanders have on this matter, and we have continued to remain this way. Furthermore, as Premier, I will be ensuring that there is an equal 50-50 representation of both Indigenous and non-Indigenous members of Parliament here in the Queensland Parliament House moving forward. And I'm not talking about one tokenistic role where that one individual has to navigate this Parliament system themselves. I will be creating more First Nations position and will also be employing more First Nations people to work across all departments here in Queensland Parliament. From the start, those that have been in the position that I'm in should have had the same objective of uniting Queensland together. Queensland was the state that had the majority that voted no in the 2023 voice referendum, and as Premier, I don't need a voting system for this, it will be enforced. Queensland's main cause of division between First Nations and non-Indigenous communities is due to the lack of equal representation between the two in positions of power. My vision for Queensland as Premier will be for us to finally walk in unity and not division, and I as Premier will not rest or back down until this is achieved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At just 7 years old, along with 2 of his siblings, my poppy was stolen. He was taken from his family, his land, and from the oldest living culture in the world. I was only around 5 years old when he passed away from cancer. I still feel the pain of losing him regularly. In a Western society, the concept of grieving is vastly different compared to Indigenous people. I think the pain of losing him still stings because the knowledge I needed passed down might have died with him. This is a horribly common experience for far too many First Nations people. Almost every form you fill out, you are met with the same question, a question which initially came from a place of inclusion. Do you identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander? Although there are plenty of First Nations peoples who struggle to answer this question because of internal racism, I struggled with this question for a completely different reason. I don't believe there is a choice in the matter. You've most likely heard it before. You either are or you're not. And I am. I am an incredibly loud and proud, unapologetic Biripi, Dunghutti, and Lebanese woman. I identify as proud of my heritage. So when someone who has First Nations heritage, but it isn't necessarily obvious, comes up to me and says, "Oh, I'm actually Aboriginal, I just don't identify or tell people," it breaks my heart. What has the system taught you about being First Nations? I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We are not the problem. I envision a Queensland where First Nations culture is embraced, cherished, and something everyone is proud of. I dream for all of us to reconnect with our communities and know exactly where you come from. A former Quilp alumni once said to me, "You can't know where you're going without knowing where you come from." From here on, I ask of you to walk into every room like your ancestors fought for you to be there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's time for private member statements when youth members will have an opportunity to raise issues of importance in their community. And I will begin with the youth member for Mosby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Imagine arriving to the country who has the oldest Indigenous culture in the world of at least 65,000 years. Yet too often tour guides skim over sacred stories or avoid them entirely. I am talking to you about the importance of our identity within Australia. The way we present our country to visitors shapes not only how others see us, but how we see ourselves. Australia's tourism must embrace and uplift Indigenous history and culture, placing it at the forefront of every experience offered to tourists. They know the word mate, our barbecue culture, how about they know our actual history? Queensland is expanding quickly as tourism increases, but its Indigenous heritage is being forgotten in the process. As tourists explore different destinations, they should learn about the land and the communities who live here. At major visitor hubs such as the Information Centre, ferry terminals, and popular parks, a series of interpretive signs should be installed showing both the positive and painful histories of our land, featuring local Indigenous language, pronunciation guides, and explorations of traditional cultural practices. Ask yourself, when you travel, do you seek a real story behind the place? Let's take a step towards bringing Australia closer to the truth and a shared pride. As you leave here today, carry with you not only memories of our country's beauty, but also a deep respect and curiosity for the histories beneath our feet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Beatson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak about social housing, not as an abstract issue, but as something that shaped my identity, my resilience, and the person I am today. As a young Aboriginal girl growing up in social housing within a regional town, I learned early what stability can mean for a child trying to find their place in the world. It gave me something invaluable, a starting point, a foundation, a home. Growing up in a low socioeconomic environment teaches you resourcefulness, it teaches you adaptability, it teaches you strength. Not by choice, but because you have to. Those lessons shaped me long before I understood their true value. That is why housing matters, because a stable home doesn't just support families, it shapes individuals. It shapes confidence, identity, and the belief that you deserve a place in the world. Many people may have seen me as disadvantaged. However, across Queensland, there are families and children who are not as lucky as I was. When I hear their stories, I see versions of myself, children with potential, with fire, with ambition, who could go anywhere if they only had a stable place to stand. A home gives a child permission to dream. It gives a teenager the space to grow. It is because of that support I have been able to build a successful professional career and have played representative netball at a national and international level. My journey is proof social housing isn't just a safety net, it can be a launching pad. I stand here today to remind you all of the importance of housing and to never forget that every young Queenslander deserves the same chance. Not because of their socio-economic status, but because they have potential. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Hayman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. True equality is both quantitative and qualitative. What does that mean? True equality is both quantitative and qualitative. What that means is in order to have true equality in our communities, we need to have high quality solutions that reach and uplift the entire community. My name is Alexander Stewart, Yama. I'm a Kamilaroi man, I'm a chef, and it is my job to feed people. I live in Capalaba and call Brisbane my home. I want you to imagine a world where when you're hungry, there is free, nutritious fruit, nuts, and veggies growing on trees, gardens, shrubs in every neighbourhood. In our state alone, it is estimated there is over 22,000 people who are Queenslanders who are experiencing homelessness at any given time. Approximately 70% of those people, roughing it in Queensland, are experiencing food insecurity. With the rising cost of living, we can only assume these numbers are sadly and shamefully going to rise. I propose a strategy that would change the lives of everyday Australians. By implementing fruiting street trees and plants into the environments of our streets and communities, a strategy like this would fundamentally change how we engage with our community for the better. We have the capacity to greatly enhance the livability of our towns, cities, by tackling the growing food scarcity and nutrition deficiencies that harms the well-being and health of our country. It is time that we come together and take the step to plant the seeds that will feed our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and the generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Mauboy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a proud Menandangi and Bidjara woman. Across the nation, children learn about lands far away. Yet too many grow up knowing little about the stories of the land they stand on. And yes, we have the cross-curriculum priority. And yes, a CAR requires Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives to be embedded in our education system. But let's be honest, it still does not give our children the chance to learn the local culture, their local history, and their local language. If we want to be stronger and a more united Australia, this must change. We should be teaching local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history, culture, and language from the earliest age of primary school and continue strengthening it through senior learning, not as a token gesture, but as part of every child's education. Because when children learn the language of the land, they learn to respect. When they learn the stories of the elders, they learn pride. And when they understand the world's oldest living culture, they grow into adults who learn truth, connection, and community. To do this properly, we must employ our locals, our elders, our community representatives, ensuring that every region teaches its own history, its own culture, and its own language, because we know we can't be put under that one umbrella. It's not just education, it's about reconciliation and connecting. It's the future where every child knows where they come from. Every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person can be proud of their history. And this is reflected, and it must be reflected, in our education. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Page.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Remote Indigenous communities in the Cape York Peninsula have been told by this government that building the Peninsula Development Road is a priority. Its construction began sometime in 1960s, and to this day it remains unsealed and incomplete. Cape York continues to be disconnected from the rest of Queensland. Every year, every wet season, every funeral, every medical visit, every time people need access to hospitals, schools, jobs, and opportunities only available in regional and metropolitan areas, these communities continue to go without actual access to actual sealed roads. These communities are already facing issues from climate change and extreme weather events. When it floods, communities are cut off from the rest of the state completely. When it's wet season, it's too dangerous to travel. Our people's lives are at risk. Our old people are cut off from care. Our young people miss out on schooling, sport, and employment. I'm calling on this government to take action now. We need to actually prioritise the completion of this road. If this government truly cares about its Queenslanders, if this government truly cares about Aboriginal and Xenakis lives, act now. The Queensland Government has already announced a $60 million commitment for the Stage 3 of the Cape York Regional Package, funding that is supposedly available from 2026 to 2027. But this is subject to negotiation with our federal government. Even if our federal government says no, this government is still obligated to the people of Cape York. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year, approximately 400,000 to 500,000 tourists visit Gari, or in Bachelor language, paradise. However, the island won't remain this way if we keep overlooking significant matters and continue putting this paradise under severe duress. My name is Shakira Morecambe-Jones. I am a proud Bachelor woman who was born, raised, and currently work on Bachelor country. For decades, we have celebrated Gari as a world-renowned tourist attraction. Yet in doing so, we have overlooked the Bachelor law that has protected this place for many thousands of years. What is good for the land must come first. Right now, what is good for the land is rest. Tourism is not inherently harmful, but the scale and the intensity has become unsustainable. Reducing the number of visitors during vulnerable times or having a cooling off period during winter will allow the island and everything native at least a chance to rejuvenate and heal. The pressure that tourists create has stressed many native animals, especially our wangari, or the dingo. These animals rely on space, silence, predictable patterns, are now disrupted and by constant human presence. Tourists are changing their behaviour in ways that put both them and us at risk. This also causes enormous environmental impact. Erosion, pollution, loss of vegetation, and strain on our natural resources are just a few of the significant outcomes caused by over-tourism. If we don't strictly reduce or cap the numbers of tourists that annually visit Gari, the damage could be irreversible. The Butchulla people managed and cared for Gari for more than 60,000 years, so why can't we? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Goodies.
"93 chairs in Queensland Parliament, however, only 37% of women represent the Queensland Parliament, and out of those women, only 2 First Nations women are elected. Debeki Debatum, hello. My name is Raven Taylor. I am a proud Doi Miriam woman from Mare Island and connections to the Waka Waka country in Cherbourg. Today, I would like to talk about the misrepresentation of First Nations women within the Parliament. This impact not only is not effective, but it affects the policies that may not fully address their communities due to circumstances regarding the lack of direct input, disconnection between First Nations values and Western values. The lack of representation aggravated by systematic issues like cultural and gender barriers and a political environment that can be estranged. I respectfully request that the House ensure equal representation implemented in Queensland Parliament, consisting of 50% First Nation members and 50% non-First Nation members, as well as an equal gender distribution of 50% women and 50% men. Having a lack of First Nations representatives is a burden on First Nations individuals who are elected, forcing them to balance diverse community expectations that party discipline and making it challenging to advocate for their community's interests. Implement this change to enhance the current system and foster a more diverse and inclusive environment with different perspectives of different experiences. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name's Nikita Hoffman, and I am a proud Yemen, Wajja Wajja, and Fijian woman who calls Brisbane Meganjin my home. Today, I draw the attention of the House to address the proposal to build a stadium on Victoria Park, Barrambin. Victoria Park has connections to the Turrbal and Yagara people, and it is one of Brisbane Meganjin's last remaining green spaces of its scale. I do not believe that Brisbane's need for an Olympic stadium should override Turrbal and Yagara people's right to connect and protect Indigenous land. A new report by Dr. Neil Peach finds that the proposed Olympic developments will take up to 66% of Victoria Park. That is 39 out of 59 hectares gone. 66% of sacred land that would be desecrated for a one-time event. Furthermore is the fact that Brisbane already has several viable stadium venues already available. Spaces like Suncorp Stadium or the Nissan Arena are already built and operate infrastructure and capacity to function as Olympic stadiums already. Members of the House, please reconsider the proposal to build this stadium on Aboriginal land. As a state, we cannot continue to put aside the needs and rights of our First Nation people, especially when there is no need to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on a critical issue, the severe lack of public ferry services connecting our regional and remote Indigenous communities. Recently, at the 2025 Palm Island Springer Festival, I was present when more than 200 prepaid passengers on the Townsville to Palm Island route were turned away because the single ferry organised by council had reached capacity. I saw Palm Island locals, families with young children, respected elders, cultural performers, and visitors all left stranded, despite having paid and prepared to participate in an important cultural event. This is not simply a transport inconvenience. It's a barrier to everyday living, to cultural celebration, and to economic growth. When our people are unable to travel reliably, we are essentially cut off from essential services, from our own cultural events, and from opportunities that should belong to all Queenslanders. I call upon the Queensland Government today to invest in expanded public ferry services, including additional vessels, multiple daily trips, and guaranteed increased capacity during major cultural events. Reconnecting our remote and rural communities is not just good policy, it is a responsibility and an investment in Queensland's cultural strength and economic future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Dakota Terawamu, and I am a proud Zenadith woman from the Dawa, Meriam, and Comet tribes of Murray Island. Today, we stand in the shadow of a decision that should trouble every Queenslander, the disbandment of the Queensland Truth-Telling and Healing Inquiry. It is more than a bureaucratic step backwards. It is a betrayal of the courage shown by elders, families, and survivors who came forward to speak their truths. Ending this process has silenced stories that needed to be heard, interrupted healing that had only just begun, and has sent a painful message that the hard truths of our past can be set aside when they become inconvenient. This is not just disappointing, it is a disgrace. In the March 2025 quarter, Indigenous people made up 37% of all peoples in custody across Australia. In the most recent Queensland Family and Child Commission report, Indigenous children and young people accounted for 55.4% of all youth convictions, despite being a minority of the youth population. To build on this, out of all Queensland First Nations young people aged 20 to 24, only 75% had attained Year 12 or equivalent certifications, compared to 92% of their non-Indigenous counterparts. These statistics reveal deep and persistent inequalities. First Nations young people are detained at dramatically higher rates. Adults are imprisoned at levels far above non-Indigenous population, and education completion remains significantly lower. These patterns are not random. They reflect structural disadvantage, intergenerational trauma, and failure of institutions meant to serve us. A truth-telling inquiry is not symbolic, but essential. It allows Queensland to confront past injustices, understand how they shape present outcomes, and drive the reforms needed to close these gaps. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for O'Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have seen time after time our babies and old people dying from preventable deaths in remote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Our people are being sent away from the hospital with quick solutions to solve a symptom rather than treating an underlying cause. Our people are being sent home with Panadol and then dying a couple of days later. The Queensland Government has a legal obligation to contribute to closing the health gap. We must establish a culturally appropriate escalation process for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are frequently representing to emergency departments across the state. This process could be the difference between life or death for our people. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities have a right to access quality healthcare, and we have an obligation to ensure they receive it. We have health experts who are strong in their profession and in their culture that can develop the process. As Queenslanders, we must ensure our healthcare professionals are at the forefront of driving this change. We need to ensure our babies and old people are living a long quality of life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Dodson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am in support of the Winners are Grinners Public Holiday Bill of 2025. Please be warned, I will mention how domestic violence matters to this bill. In this year alone, as Queenslanders, we have multiple wins across the state with people screaming, drinking, celebrating, all of that. What people need after all of that is a break from the drinking and the violence. In a 2025 report from the ABC News, quote, Victoria, please prepare for a 20% spike in violence against women ahead of the AFL Grand Final. In another case, on the Say No to Violence website, they reported a 5.5% increase of all domestic violence against families. I stand before you all and say, I am a victim of this as well, growing up. And nothing hurts more than going through that and going to school the very next day. So what I require is our women and children need the extra public holiday. They need that opportunity to recover, survive, and for all the working women and children out there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry. I draw the attention of the House to the proposal of instituting a public holiday after each Queensland victory. While I acknowledge the passion and enthusiasm for our state's sporting achievements, we must consider the significant economic repercussions of such a measure. The implementation of frequent public holidays carries substantial economic costs, particularly for our small and medium enterprises. Businesses face increased labour expenses due to elevated penalty rates, often as high as 2.5 times the standard pay. Many establishments opt to reduce operating hours or close entirely, further disrupting productivity. Critics estimate that each additional public holiday could cost the state economy approximately $1 billion annually. While the tourism sector may experience a temporary boost, the overall loss in productivity and economic output cannot be ignored. Small and medium enterprises are the backbone of our economy. They are especially vulnerable, lacking the resources to absorb these increased costs. Therefore, I urge careful consideration of these economic realities before proceeding with this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Burnie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak on an issue that must no longer be treated as a footnote, a poster on the classroom wall, or a brief acknowledgement during selected weeks of the year. My name is Kibera Chloe Compton, a Wurundjeri woman with connections to Kalkadoon, and grew up in a broken education system. As a young black girl, I rarely saw my culture or history reflected in what I was taught. I stand here as someone who's learning, listening, and committed to strengthening the way our education system recognises and honours the Aboriginal culture. For far too long, the teaching of our history, our knowledge, our stories in schools have been treated as an add-on. Real change requires more than a symbolic gesture. Real change means embedding Aboriginal knowledge into everyday learning so our children grow strong in culture, identity, and truth. Mr. Speaker, this means integrating Aboriginal practices, perspectives, and cultural understanding across the whole curriculum, not isolated to a moment, but as a core part of our everyday education so every child in this country understands and feels seen. School must build genuine relationships with community, building relationships with elders and recognising that they are our leaders and our cultural authorities and seeking their guidance to stand as they practice. Teachers need more mandatory annual cultural training delivered by MOB so they can teach with respect, accuracy and confidence in classrooms. Should be using community-approved cultural resources to uphold the authenticity. And importantly, we must bring children back to country. Country is our first teacher and it remains our most powerful. Today, Mr. Speaker, I call for communities, schools, teachers and leaders to come together to ensure our culture is not an occasional thing, not a sympathetic or not superficial, but woven into our daily life, our education, and always shaped by our MOB. When our elders' voices lead our classroom, our children stand taller, our culture grows stronger, and Australia becomes a wiser generation to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Tapsell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At 15, most people are still finding their place in the world, but for kids in care, the system is already asking them to live on their own. Yama, my name is Tegan Olsen and I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman. At the age of 19, I began the process of becoming a kinship carer for my 2 cousins. One of them now lives permanently with my family, but the eldest was transitioned into independent living at just 14, rather than with kin, even though family was willing and able to take them in. In Queensland, children in care can enter into independent living at 15. These placements are designed to prepare them for adulthood with minimum supervision and a small allowance. But 15 is far too young for independence. At this age, young people need guidance, not isolation. When Indigenous children in care are pushed into independent living too early, they often become disconnected from their culture, their community, losing the sense of belonging that is vital for their well-being. This lack of support doesn't just harm them personally, it contributes to broader social issues, including an increase in youth crime. These outcomes are not the fault of children, they are a result of a system that promises quick exits over long-term success. That's why legislative change is urgently needed to ensure independence is a gradual, supported journey and not a sudden cliff. To change this, we need reform that changes the minimum age for independent living placements to 16. Independence should not begin at 15. It should be a staged process that starts with strong cultural and community support and continues into early adulthood. Raising the age would give young people time to finish school, build life skills, and stay connected to family and culture. Alongside this, we must invest in kinship care, mentoring, and transitional programs so independence becomes a supported journey, not a sudden leap. Independence should never mean isolation. At 15, our kids need guidance, not abandonment. True independence means stepping into adulthood with culture, community, and support at your side. Let's change the legislation and give our kids the future they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Mayors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yama, my name is Kenisha, a proud Wiradjuri woman. I rise to speak on adult time, adult crime. While I understand the intent of this bill, I cannot support it. Treating young people as adults should be a measure of last resort, not the default. Our young people are our next generation. They're still growing, learning, and capable of change. Sending them to adult prisons too early risks destroying potential, undermining rehabilitation. Sorry, you may not believe it, but they do have a unique capacity to learn, grow, and change. Serious crimes must be addressed, but adult sense for youth should only happen in extreme cases. After every chance for guidance, intervention, and restorative justice has been used. We must protect our youth by holding them accountable. Justice should be fair, measured, focused on reform, ensuring we guide our next generation rather than losing them to the system. We want to build our future, not break them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I want to share with the House the arguments against the Winners are Grinners Public Holiday Bill 2025. Yes, most of us love supporting our state in sports, but this bill is not a reasonable argument to take advantage of average Queenslanders. For example, small businesses having to wait until very late on Sunday night to figure out if they're going to open or close that Monday. If so, the workplaces would have to come up with the public holiday wages themselves. Many small Queensland businesses would lose sales and profits if all teams have a successful year. Furthermore, all year 10s, 11s, and 12s would be missing mock and exam blocks in the same period most grand finals are held. Again, if all teams were to win, the senior grades would be missing up to 20 days or more of schooling when year 12s already have a smaller year. Consequently, our youth at school would be struggling to stay engaged and catch up with classes, and small businesses would be fighting to stay afloat in the cost of living crisis. As a result of the Winners are Grinners bill should not be approved because it does not better youth and the greater Queensland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Carmody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What room am I sleeping in tonight? Come on, Yufla, I can't study. It's too noisy. Good afternoon, all present today in the room. My name is Tayan Neal, and I'm a proud Gunganji, Bindal, Wupabara, and Gugajangan man from the Aboriginal community of Yarrabah in Far North Queensland. The purpose of this speech today is to highlight the issue of the housing crisis within my community and to provide you with a solution. I acknowledge that the issue of housing is complex and not resolved by one answer. However, I believe the issue lies when community members are not involved in the construction and/or maintenance of community housing. Having inadequate and poor housing negatively impacts people, children, elderly, and the wider community. The impacting factors are health, well-being, and education. Just recently, Yarrabah was fortunate enough to secure government funding to build more homes. From the $242 million dedicated to building new social housing, developing residential land lots for further new housing, and upgrading existing social housing in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander local government areas. Under Minister for Housing and Public Works and Minister for Youth, Sam O'Connor. In Yarrabah, 7 modular homes, all 3 or 4 bedroom, are currently being installed and are expected to be completed by the end of the month. I believe this is fantastic and will definitely have positive outcomes for the community. However, the issue lies when our people and community members are not given the opportunities to be upskilled and are part of the project themselves. A solution and recommendation that I think my local council need to ensure is that apprenticeships and traineeships need to be brought to the table and implemented so that community members are not only employed, but they will also be able to build and maintain homes for our people, by our people. This will lead to self-determination, will provide more homes that will improve the health, well-being, and livelihood of our children and the next generation. This will ensure that children in my community of Yarrabah aren't questioning where they will be sleeping tonight. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Imagine a world where we could care for and live off the land the way our ancestors did, without systematic assimilation and destruction of our culture. My name is Jamie Lee. I am a Kalali, Walkarukaba, and Yinabara person living on Yinabara country. I have seen firsthand the impact within my community on our environment because of the land clearing and development, whether that be logging, residential, industrial, agricultural, or even quarry upgrades. For a fact, we have 4 quarries on the Sunshine Coast within a 100-kilometre radius. These factors are affecting our land in many ways, from our extinct or endangered species to land degradation. Everything we are fighting for, we want to be worth it. Or everything we are fighting for won't be worth it if we don't make change to our pathetic conservation laws. I spend over 50% of my time volunteering to care for country and have observed factual, recorded temperature rises in the Mary River, the same river that flows polluted water all the way from Brisbane to the Great Barrier Reef up north. If we can't preserve, adapt, and care for the land the way our ancestors did, there will be no more land to look after. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Bengala Wright. I'm a proud Yagal, Bunjalung, and Kamilaroi man. I wanted to share the implementation of Clare's laws into Queensland. In the memory of Claire Wood, a woman who was murdered by her ex-boyfriend who she was unaware of his history of abuse. It is It is already implemented in England, Wales, and similar schemes exist in Scotland, New Zealand, and Northern Ireland. A pilot was launched in New South Wales in 2016, and a pilot is on the way in South Australia as well. The core of Clare's Law is to provide a legal pathway for individuals to provide a legal pathway for an individual to gain knowledge of a current or potential partner of potential history of violence. That gives those individuals making safer decisions and giving them an early prevention solution. Since the age of 15, 1 in 4 women experience violence from an intimate partner. 1 in 14 men experience violence from an intimate partner. In 2023-2024, almost 9 in 10 hospitalisations for assault by a partner were for females. In Australia, we're already on the losing side of domestic family violence. If we don't take steps to decrease this rate, our women, our children, and even our men who are victims in communities will continue not to feel safe, and domestic violence will be embedded in our culture for the generations to come. Intergenerational trauma for our victims will be common for our families. It is time to make Queensland safe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name's Josephine and I'm a proud Kamilaroi and Cooma woman. I'd like to quickly talk to you about the Southwest Queensland, a region with unique and challenging opportunities. First, water is a critical issue. Southwest Queensland relies heavily on the arsen basins, but it substantially is a threat. Fact, some areas have significant water drops. Pressure impact on agriculture and local communities. But we need to better this management. We need to conserve and strategise. Protect with resources. Second, supporting remote communities is essential. These communities face limited access to services like healthcare and education. The distance between specialists and medical care can be hundreds of kilometres, creating significant barriers. Investing in infrastructure and technology is critical. Critical to bridging the gap and ensuring fair equality for life in all residents. Let's work together to address these challenges and build a stronger and more sustainable Southwest Queensland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Just before, the youth member for Plum got very keen to contribute towards the bill, but I know she's got a private member's statement, so I'm going to call the member again so you can read your private member's statement. Call the member for Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me ask you a question. When I say Cairns, what do you think about? Do you think about the environment and the positives that come out, or how its youth crime rates are extremely high? Good morning, everyone. My name is Chula Keating. I'm a proud Kukuyaw and Kukuyalanji woman born and raised in Cairns. Here today to talk about an issue not only affecting me, my community, but many Indigenous people around the country. I hope my speech will be able to be a stepping stone to make a change for the next generations. Not all Black people are criminals. Cairns has a reputation for having high youth crime rates. However, not every Indigenous young person in Cairns is offending. It is only a small reoffending group, but unfortunately, the rest of Cairns views us all the same. Today, as the rates are growing, there are many challenges the offenders and their families are facing. A small list: mental health, drugs and alcohol, low income, unaffordable housing, lack of education, rehabilitation programs, and the support from their own families. In Cairns, there are a number of funded family support services. Many of them are mandated through government agencies such as Child Safety. Our families need to take back their own power, stand up and do the right thing for their children and stop the cycle for the next generations. The services can only do so much. These offenders' families need to support their youth for all of us. Not all young Black people are offenders. Over-policing, racial profiling, and social media groups have given us all a bad reputation in our community. Our achievements aren't highlighted on the front pages of our local paper, only that we steal cars. I hope this can change soon for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Have I called everybody that had a private member statement? I call the youth leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is that the House do now adjourn. This is at the end of the night. So you've been here for a long time, and this is a vote whether we finish for the night. It is extremely rare that anybody votes no to this. Extremely rare.
Well, I think he's issuing you guys a challenge.
Those that have opinion say aye. Those against no. I think the ayes have it. I call the Youth Premier.
On behalf of everyone, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Honourable Pat Weir MP, for presiding over our speeches today. To the guest speakers, mentors, members of Parliament and parliamentary staff, your insights and support have inspired us to think critically and engage deeply with the democratic process. Thank you for your guidance, encouragement and your tireless work behind the scenes. To my fellow youth members, thank you for your passion, your ideas and your respectful debate. It's been an honour to share this space with you today.
Congratulations, youth members. You spoke very, very well. Very impressed. You spoke with confidence, passion and respect on issues affecting Queensland and your local communities. I can tell you have worked hard to prepare yourselves and your speeches. Today you've learned about the Queensland Parliament, how laws are made and explored ways to get involved. If you notice a problem or if something is not working, I hope you now have the skills to create change or advocate for the values and causes that are important to you. Remember, you can join or start an action group, sign or sign a petition, attend a community meeting, make a submission to a parliamentary committee or attend a hearing, join a community group or a political party. Before we go, it is important to acknowledge the following people. Thank you to the members of Parliament who are able to join us today. I believe the Honourable Sam O'Connor and members for Ipswich, Bancroft, Alcester, South Brisbane and Capalaba have all been here, and the Honourable Fiona Simpson as well. I acknowledge the hard work, support and assistance of the Office for Youth, Department of Housing and Public Works and the mentors here today. Thank you to the parliamentary staff who have worked tirelessly to organise the activities today. Coral Lee Kemp, Jacqueline Hale, Peter Yagmore, Kate Riley, Linda Preddy, Kirsten Murray, Esther Thomas and Isabel Segal. Lastly, but most importantly, participants, congratulations once again on your speeches. The leadership and advocacy skills you demonstrated today on the chamber floor shows that the future is in good hands. And I declare the 2025 Deeral Indigenous Youth Parliament closed.